Swing and a miss. Struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
And the Sixers win it! Wow!
Oh man, Embiid just posterized Russell Westbrook.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get a hell yeah!
All right, what's up, everybody? It is Deibs, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. Welcome to Party on Broad. Got a special show for you today. One of the best in the biz covering the Eagles joins us today. He is Mr. Zach Berman of The Athletic and Birds with Friends podcast. What's up, Zach?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on your show.
It's an honor. It's an honor. I thought, currently the Eagles sit at 1-3-1, yet like among the top of the NFC East. Today, I thought it'd be fun to kind of grade the Eagles at the quarter mark. But before we get started, there's a lot of finger pointing as to who is to blame for the Eagles' slow start. For me, it's a failure top to bottom between Schwartz, Roseman, Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz. Zach, who do you think is most to blame for the Eagles' early struggles? And is there any way that you could even possibly point all the blame in one direction?
I don't think you can point all the blame in one direction, and I don't think every loss or every game has been the same this year. Carson Wentz, I thought, played well against the Steelers. I don't think the defense played well enough. Early in the season, I thought there were clear roster deficiencies where you can kind of point to Howie Roseman. There were some coaching decisions, even in that Bengals game, that you can point to Doug Peterson. So really, it goes all over the place. When you win, it's collective. When you lose, it's collective. I don't put it on one person. Now, that being said, ultimately losing bears responsibility. So, you're not going to get rid of the entire organization. So at some point, if things crater, then the decision maker, Jeffrey Lurie, needs to needs to objectively determine how that's weighed. That being said, I don't think there's one person who's responsible for them being 1-3-1 right now.
Yes, sir. So let's talk about grades. On the surface, it's been a brutal start for Carson Wentz, but when you dig deeper, the stats don't really truly tell the full story on Carson's performance this year. Talk about finger pointing. The Carson Wentz hate is back on Twitter. How would you grade Carson Wentz's performance so far through 4 games this year?
As far as a letter grade or just my analysis on it? I mean, my analysis on it is that I thought the first 3 games were bad. The interceptions, the missed throws, that shouldn't be happening for the 5th year of a franchise quarterback. And I think Carson would tell you the same thing. These past 2 weeks, there have certainly been improvements, and he's starting to look like the quarterback you thought that he was going to be this year. And it certainly doesn't help him that he's playing with backups on the offensive line, backups in the receiving core. And that's the reality of football. He's not the only quarterback who's dealt that hand, but you do need to factor that in. So it's hard to kind of give a letter grade overall. If I did, it would probably be high C, low B. But the reality is that it's fairly nuanced. I think the way he played early in the season is different than the way he's played these past 2 weeks.
And then let's go to the other side of the ball. We've seen Jim Schwartz go from hero to zero within these last 2 weeks. That's kind of been the story, especially these last 2 years. The Eagles are getting to the quarterback, but continue to have some serious glaring holes on a defense that gets exposed on a regular basis. How would you grade Jim Schwartz so far this season? And is the criticism he's getting right now, is that justified? Is that fair?
Well, you're often as good as your last game, and at least in the minds of people who are praising or criticizing. The reality is this: the way the Eagles are built defensively, you're going to have games where if you're not getting to the quarterback on a consistent basis, your back 7 is going to be exposed. The way the Eagles are built on this defense is they have money and resources invested in that defensive line, and they have a deep defensive line. They have a number 1 cornerback, but obviously they haven't invested much in the linebackers, and they're really judging their evaluation ability on kind of the development ability on the safeties on the other corners. So that's something you need to consider. Now against the Steelers, they only had one sack. When you have one sack, that hurts you on third downs. And what I'll say is this, and you've seen this over and over again, is that these veteran quarterbacks tend to do well against Jim Schwartz's defense. And it's not just these standout star quarterbacks, like Ben Roethlisberger. You can look at Ryan Fitzpatrick as an example of that. Quarterbacks who know what they're seeing at the line tend to do well against Schwartz's defense. Younger quarterbacks tend not to do as well. And I think you saw that with Nick Mullins the other night. You saw that. I thought Joe Burrow played decently against the Eagles, but the Eagles were able to get to him, obviously. So really, it varies. It's hard for me to give an overall grade once again because this has been game by game. So if we had this conversation after San Francisco, it would be a lot different. And you need to kind of remove yourself and look at it overall. I don't think the defense has been horrible overall, but I don't think they played well enough in multiple games this season. And so I would probably go in the high C's, low B's again, if that makes sense.
All right, awesome. Let's go to Doug Peterson. This guy's play calling has been kind of the topic of discussion as well through 4 games. Yes, the injuries you touched on the offensive line, but Doug's offense continues to look slow. It continues to look predictable. How would you grade Doug Peterson's play calling so far this season? And have you seen any signs of improvement, positive signs of progress on offense?
Yeah, once again, you're looking at an offense that's different than the one that they plan to have this season. So you said the offense looks slow. Well, they expected to have Deshaun Jackson and Jalen Reagor, and it's a different offense, obviously, and you need to consider that when you're looking at them being slow. They were built around having 12 personnel out there. You don't have Dallas Goedert on the field, so that changes the offense. Now, that's part of coaching, right? You need to make adjustments. And again, I think it's been uneven. I'll put it this way, and I don't mean to evade the question, but when you ask for grades, it's just wrap it all up into one package. And I don't think you can precisely do that right now. They're 1-3-1. When you're 1-3-1, that's a problem, and you're not playing well. And they haven't played well enough this season. So I would say Doug overall would probably be in that C range, But again, I've never been a teacher, so it's hard for me to kind of accurately gauge what the curve is that you need to do. I can tell you what I'm seeing, and what I'm seeing is a team that early in the season, especially, was not aggressive enough on offense. Whether it was the quarterback, whether it was the coach, I don't think they were creative enough at times. I thought Doug made some outstanding calls against the Steelers. You put up 29 points against Pittsburgh. That's a good sign. Now that being said, there's other parts of Doug's job besides offensive game planning that you need to consider. That's kind of pushing the right buttons in the building, getting the guys ready to play. How are they practicing? Things like that. And I think we need a larger sample size to go around here. But I don't think you can overstate the fact that they're 1-3-1. And when you're 1-3-1, things aren't good, and you can't sugarcoat 1-3-1.
Howie Roseman. I know this is way too small sample size, but it's way too early. But let's talk about his offseason, because you look around the NFL. L.J. Fort, Rasul Douglas, Sidney Jones made an impact last weekend. Nelson Aguilar has 3 touchdown catches. So and you look at last year's draft, and there are players across the draft that are making a positive impact, while Jalen Hurts is essentially has been used as a decoy through the first 4 games this season. So Howie seems to be, continuing to fall in the same trap. He's too reliant on veterans, while he cannot select top talent in the draft. He's just missing the mark. How would you grade Howie Roseman's offseason so far through 4 games?
Yeah, so going into the season, I thought they didn't do enough at wide receiver. I said that throughout the offseason. I thought they needed more of a veteran. I think they boxed themselves in relying exclusively on the draft. And I know they made the Marquise Goodwin trade, but I thought there was too much dependence on Deshaun Jackson being healthy this year, and we haven't seen enough of that, enough evidence. Like the fact that Deshaun Jackson hasn't played these past 2 games and has been limited, throughout the season, really.
Yeah.
I don't think you can say, oh, well, that's a mark against the Eagles. You should have planned for that. That's baked into the price of Deshaun Jackson right now. So you saw that last year. So I don't know if they did enough at wide receiver this offseason. And I said I don't think they did enough at linebacker this offseason. Now, as far as the draft, and look, I mean, what I thought of that Jalen Hurts pick, you can read that on The Athletic. I wrote that the night of the draft, so I'm not defending the pick. I didn't like the pick at the time. I thought it was a luxury pick in a year when they didn't need to make a luxury pick. Yep. And I thought it was also a little bit of a stretch on the evaluation of a player. That being said, once you make the pick, you can't sit here after 5 games and say it was the wrong pick to make because that pick wasn't made for the first 5 games of the season. Yep. If Carson Wentz went down in week 10 and Jalen Hurts stepped in and looked really, he looked good, the sentiment on that pick might be different. There is value to a backup quarterback. And then the same thing with if you're comparing Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson, I wrote on draft night, I like Justin Jefferson more than Jalen Reagor. Mm-hmm. That being said, you can't sit here after 5 games when Jalen Reagor's been banged up and say that was the wrong pick to make based on the evidence that we've seen thus far. You need a larger sample size to say that. But I do think the plan on defense, in particular at linebacker, I think that was flawed. And I do think you can go back to Howie Roseman and Jim Schwartz and say you went into the season without a linebacker who – every linebacker on their roster has a lower cap hit than their long snapper. What does that say to you? They haven't invested a draft pick in that position higher than the 3rd round since Jordan Hicks in 2015, and they take a 3rd rounder this year, Davion Taylor, and he's not on the field. So what they're getting at linebacker is exactly what they're paying for at linebacker.
Nailed it. All right. Little question about Zach Gertz. From the eye test, Zach Gertz appears to be checked out. I don't know about you, man, but his production has considerably dropped. He's getting bumped off routes way too easily. The chemistry, the timing between Carson and Zach is the worst it's ever been. What do you attribute to Zach Ertz's struggles this season? And can that be fixed? Can they unlock one of their biggest offensive weapons moving forward?
I don't think he's checked out.
Okay.
I think, first off, he's answering the bell every week. He's on the field. He's practicing, which frankly is more than a lot of people on that team or not a lot, but some people on that team can say right now. Like Zach Ertz, for all the knocks against him that fans have made for about perceived toughness or durability, this is a guy who's at practice every day, who's on the field every Sunday. And there's something to be said about that when you look what's going on elsewhere on the roster. Now, I agree the production's down, and there's no defending the fact that the production's down. He's getting defensive attention, absolutely. And when you don't have the other players that they have on offense, defenses are going to focus on you. I don't think that can explain away everything that's going on. I think part of this is a big part of it's on Zach. I mean, Zach, what he does well is find ways to get open. I think part of this is on Carson. I think part of this is on the play calling. There's a lot of this to go around. I do agree that it looks like Wentz and Ertz are not always on the same page, which is odd because those guys have always been on the same page, it seems. So I don't have a good explanation. I've tried to figure it out, and I think the first few weeks of the season, I kept saying, small sample size. What's happened these past 2 weeks against San Francisco and against Pittsburgh, that's been bad. I mean, that's as unproductive as you've seen from Ertz. Yeah. So it is a problem because they need him to be good in this offense. But I don't think Zach Ertz has checked out. I've seen no evidence to suggest that he's checked out.
All right, last question before we let you go. Travis Fulgham, man, this guy's just the Eagles' darling right now. He's been sensational. 10 catches, 152 yards versus the Steelers. What are your impressions on this guy? Do you see these last 2 weeks as a flash in the pan, or do you see this guy as a guy that can be built around Jalen Reagor, Carson Wentz moving forward?
Well, I would say somewhere in between. I don't think he's a flash in the pan because the numbers might be inflated, but the way he's getting it is not. That's legitimate. You watch him, he's making plays on the ball. He's playing the way the Eagles wanted JJ or Arcega-Whiteside to play. I mean, that big-bodied receiver who's making contested catches, that's what Travis Fulgham's given them. So I think, if you have 10 for 150 in a game, that shows you a ceiling that's fairly hard to reach. That really doesn't happen. Now, is he a building block player for them? Along with Jalen Reagor, I think that might be premature because it's only been 2 games. Mm-hmm. But, you've seen examples of receivers who've kind of come out of nowhere. Victor Cruz with the Giants, he was on IR his first year, comes out his second year and emerges. Miles Austin with the Cowboys, took him a few years. He jumps out, I think year 3 or year 4, becomes a big wide receiver. It's certainly not out of the realm of possibility that Travis Fulgham develops into this reliable starter for the Eagles. But I think that it's premature to say he's a building block for them, but he should absolutely stay in the wide receiver rotation this year.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. That is the Zach Berman of The Athletic. Check out all of his content at theathletic.com. Birds with Friends. Anything you want to plug, dude?
Yeah, theathletic.com. Make sure you check it out, our coverage. And then, like you said, Birds with Friends, along with Bo Wolf and Shio Kapadia. Please listen to that as well.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you so much, man. Take it
Anytime.
easy.
Take care.
Sixers win it! Wow!
Oh, man, and being just posterized Russell Westbrook.
You